Hello and welcome to the CX Files for 23rd March 2023. My name is Mark Hillary and I'm in Sao Paulo, Brazil.
And I'm Peter Ryan in Montreal. Mark, great to see you. We're coming towards the end of this month and the end of the quarter. I can't believe how fast 2023 is flying by. But I think you told me one time a few years ago, once you hit the big 5-0, you notice how quickly time does move.
Yeah, especially if you have a young daughter as well. My daughter will be 1 on March 28th, so it's just coming up.
Wow.
And it just feels incredible, you know, that 1 year has just gone by so quickly.
No, it's true. It's amazing because I recall that it was about 1 year ago this week that you and myself were in London and we were celebrating the book launch of Simon Danczuk, where he wrote the history of Dolphin Square, and we all converged at a pub, which was a lot of fun, met a lot of folks after the pandemic had more or less finished, was able to catch up with so many different people. And yeah, here we are a year later and recording another episode of the CX Files.
Yeah, and that pub meeting was a couple of weeks before she was due to be born, actually. So I was taking a bit of a risk coming out to the UK that time. But yeah, it all worked out in the end.
It does. Risk and reward. That's the way you got to look at it.
So why don't you go ahead and introduce this week's interview, because I know that this was a conversation that you did.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Mark, I was really fortunate to have had a few minutes to catch up with Chandni Bhatt. Now, Chandni is an absolutely dynamic CX professional. She is based in the United Kingdom, and she's got one of the coolest titles I have ever heard. She is the senior manager for member happiness around customer experience at an organization called Beauty Pie. Now, I wasn't familiar with Beauty Pie before Chandni and I started chatting, but she explained to me that it's one of the largest member-based organizations in which members can purchase beauty products through a members portal. And effectively, we're talking very high-end products in cosmetics, fragrances, etc. They operate in the UK. They're operating in the States. She made a point of saying that they might be operating soon in Canada. We can keep our fingers crossed. But more or less, it was a great discussion with somebody who I see as having a really progressive view about how CX needs to operate, somebody who's done a lot in their career around CX. Just so you know, for full disclosure, we talk about it in the interview, but prior to working at Beauty Pie, she was the head of digital customer delight at Paperchase, which, as we know, is one of the largest stationery companies in the UK in terms of retailing different stationery products. I told her she probably has sequentially the coolest job titles I've ever heard in my life of anybody who works in CX, which is quite cool. But I think what people will find is an interview with somebody who really has seen the gambit of CX with the different organizations she's worked with and brings a lot of insight in terms of the intricacies and the challenges and quite frankly, the interesting aspects of doing CX for an organization that is member-based, but also one that deals in very high-value products.
Yeah, there's a lot to sort of unpack there, and there's a lot that's actually very interesting about that. I think, you know, clearly selling high-end products is different to just selling cans of beans. And at the same time, you know, trying to sustain a member-only organization means you're constantly working on how do you retain those subscriptions as well. So you've got to keep bringing people back in to purchase additional products, but at the same time, just make sure they keep paying their monthly membership fee as well.
Well, this is something that Chandni and I talked about, and something that she made a point of saying very early on in the interview that our listeners will hear at the outset of our chat is the fact that you've got people who are choosing to spend perhaps more money than they would if they were to go to a pharmacy or to a department store on these products. And there's a couple of challenges with that. One, you've got to make sure that CX is as solid as it's going to be, because as you say, Mark, you know, what's to say that if they have a bad experience, they might decide to cancel their membership. And the second thing is to make sure that when you've got individuals who are working on the telephones or who are managing digital interactions, they're able to do so in as informed a manner as possible, because in many cases, the members of Beauty Pie are looking to effectively find somebody who is able to counsel them on what they should buy and what they shouldn't buy, almost acting in a concierge fashion. And as Chandni mentioned to me, the ability to deliver these really high value, high-end outcomes is essential if you're going to drive that loyalty. And again, that goes back to what you were saying in terms of retaining the members and potentially growing them through word of mouth.
Yeah, and I mean, I had my own experience with a similar sort of business. I mean, not high end, but a subscription based business recently, because I had two dogs, and I had a subscription for their food and their treats and toys and stuff. So every month I would get a load of stuff delivered. But like last month, the store delivered everything incorrectly. It was all completely, it was as if they'd sent me somebody else's products. And it wasn't the fact that they made a mistake. It was the fact that it was an absolute nightmare to fix the problem, to get somebody to come and collect it, to then make sure that I got my correct products. It took me hours of negotiating with them, and even to the point where I had to photograph and send them photos to prove that they'd sent the wrong products. And so it was, for me, it was like, okay, I just canceled the subscription that day. And they still haven't refunded me weeks later. And, so it's like, I think that you see there exactly the kind of problem with subscriptions is that it's not, everybody makes a mistake now and again. You might get sent the wrong product, but it's about that interaction and being a member of a club that really sort of counts.
Well, this is it. And there's all sorts of different elements to it. They've got to get it right every time, or they do indeed risk losing those members. And, Mark, something that has come up a lot has been the issue about delivery times. As you were saying, the accuracy of delivery, but also the times that things are going to be delivered. If you're promising that you're going to get something out to somebody on a certain day, you more or less have to make sure that it does happen. I think consumers are patient if there's a late delivery once, maybe twice, but if it's consistently something going on, then again, that's something that you've got to take into account. And chatting with Chandni over the course of about 15, 20 minutes, we talked about some of these issues around managing expectations, making sure that you get the order right, the accuracy of delivery times, etc. And well, I think that, Chandni is very upfront about the fact that there are obstacles, there are challenges in terms of the current CX environment and the current labor shortage that so many different companies are facing. The ability or the effort required to deliver on that has to be 100% each time. And that's what differentiates a company like Beauty Pie versus some of the other subscription-based organizations like the one that you were dealing with.
Oh, yeah. And it's been a difficult business model. A lot of companies adopted this throughout the pandemic, especially when it was very difficult to sell anything through non-essential retail. We saw companies like Heinz offering baked bean subscription and Heineken offering beer subscriptions. So there was suddenly a big push to create this subscription model for different businesses. But I don't think that very many of those pandemic subscriptions still exist.
No, you're very true on that. Well, look, it's probably going to be one of the more interesting discussions that we've had, both in terms of the individual as well as the company that she represents. So let's go straight to the chat that I had with Chandni Bhatt from Beauty Pie.
Okay, great.
Well, in what promises to be a very lively CX Files podcast today, I'm really fortunate to be joined by Chandni Bhatt. Chandni joins us from her home just outside London in the Greater Windsor area, I believe you mentioned. It's great to have you here.
Great to be here. Thanks, Peter.
No problem. And I will tell you, for full disclosure, Chandni, I was just in the UK last week, so I am just going through withdrawal right now. I'm missing my double-decker bars. I'm missing Coronation Street, although you're in the south, so maybe I should say I'm missing EastEnders. But it's really great to have somebody with such a diverse background in CX join us. And I will say that as I was checking out your profile on LinkedIn, you've got a couple of the coolest sounding job roles that I have ever seen in my life. So you were head of digital customer delight for Paper Chase Products, a wonderful
Yes.
store, a wonderful retailer in the United Kingdom. And currently, you are the senior manager for member happiness at Beauty Pie, which is your current role. And I was just curious, before we dive into it, how do you come up with, or how do you get such cool sounding job titles? I'm doing something wrong.
Well, thank you. When looking for a job, it's my top criteria to get a really fun title, of course, because we spend most of our day at work. Why not have a fun twist? It's a really great conversation starter as well. But in all seriousness, customer service or customer support, contact center, those things are becoming a bit more phased out now.
Yeah.
And where I've been working, we really are here to delight the customer and be a member happiness team. So why would we not want to wear that name outwardly?
Yeah, I think that's a really good philosophy and a really good approach to it. So I'd like to start a little bit by talking about Beauty Pie itself, because while I am very familiar with a lot of the different companies that you worked for, Beauty Pie is not one of them. So if you could just tell us a little bit about the organization, what it does, the background, the business model, that would be great.
Of course. So I'll begin with our founder, Marcia Kilgore, originally from Canada's own.
Love it. Love it.
She
This is getting
also
off to a great start.
exactly also the founder of FitFlop, which you may be aware of. So Beauty Pie is actually a luxury buyers club. So we go to all the same factories as the top retailers. I won't name any names. Remove that hefty price tag, cut out the middlemen. So using the same ingredients and premium products, we sell them direct to the consumer. So that's what makes us the first luxury beauty buyers club in the UK, the US, and hopefully in Canada very soon.
I can hope so, because if you're doing this type of an approach towards luxury products, I hope that includes men's luxury products as well, because I'm a big consumer of certain colognes that I find are getting more and more expensive. And if there's any way that you guys can help me with a little bit of a discount, that would be wonderful.
Well, the next time you're in the UK, let me know.
That will not be too long in the future. So very good. I might have to accelerate my timeline. Okay. In all seriousness, though, what I think is fascinating is that when you consider the different roles you've had running CX or strategizing around CX, they've been with relatively traditional companies, technology firms, the retail space. How would you say working in customer management from the perspective of a luxury member-based business like Beauty Pie is different to what you would have experienced in the past?
Yeah, great question. Well, I'd say loyalty is even more at the forefront here. These customers are actively choosing to spend their money to unlock members' prices. So there's that. They join a membership knowing what they're going to be getting. So we have a very active community. Outside of the regulars who make their purchase, we may have members who are not purchasing but are just very loud in our community. So we need to ensure that we have the right resources across community and social media, not just the people, at the end of the phones answering, "Where is my order?" We need to keep these people engaged, listen to what products they want, start developing products that we perhaps don't have right now, and increase our footprint across what we're being told that the consumer would like to use.
Now, this is really interesting, Chandni, because you made a point there. These are members that are choosing to spend probably more money with your organization, with Beauty Pie, than they might do with other companies or with other retailers or with other organizations from which they could buy. And this is where I think that you're hitting on something that's really important, because you've got to keep that level of engagement so high. You've got to know your end member as well as you possibly can. And a few weeks ago on this podcast, Marianne Rutz and I had a long chat about the future of CX, and something that we both were agreeing upon, whether it's on this side of the pond or on your side of the pond, it seems that systematically there's a big problem around CX. There's a big problem around customer experience where businesses are almost training their consumers not to have expectations, that they're not going to try and get to know them, that they're almost throwing out the whole idea about that relationship and that loyalty that you referred to. So given the challenges and given the environment that we're facing with regards to heightened customer, or in your case, member expectations, but yet a lower volume of qualified labor that wants to get involved in working in CX, how do you reconcile that?
So I absolutely agree. The customer expectations are evolving and changing. And I think what makes us quite unique is this is quite an emotive purchase. People are coming to us with their skincare needs, their, cosmetic requirements, or even with supplements. So we have the experts in-house to help curate a very personalized experience through video consultations, one-to-ones on the phone or web chat, however the customer wants to interact with us, to really talk them through their skincare routine. And people love having the chat. It's like talking to a friend. So it's not your traditional, where is my order, cancel my account. It's more so helping someone change their skincare lifestyle. And what may be your goals now may not be in 6 months. So we continue that conversation and make sure that we are evolving with our customers' changing needs.
It's interesting for me because you're one of a series of chats that I'm going to be having with CX professionals representing higher end, higher margin, higher value products and services going forward. And one of the things that I am fascinated by is this element about this level of engagement. I was chatting with somebody not long ago who I'm going to be having on as a guest on the podcast, talking about the luxury travel space and about the fact that when you get somebody on a video conference or you get somebody on the telephone, it's not a case of, I want to book this ticket to go somewhere. It's all a case of almost like a concierge and almost an advisor and a consultant. And it's that level of engagement, I think, that's really required if you're going to get people, as you say, to come back when they want to have that desire to spend, when that emotion hits them, that they want to spend a little bit more on something that's really, really high quality and something that they want to be associated with. So moving into 2023, what do you see as the biggest challenge for customer experience management when it comes to the luxury element of consumer goods or services?
I would say balancing how we can, as we grow as a business, always keeping that concierge service as we have it today. Of course, you've got big aspirations to grow. So with that will come an element of automation and bringing in conversational AI to take away those non-consultative processes so that our frontline agents can continue to personalize as much as possible. And also omni-channel experiences. Right, you pick up your phone, you want to talk on WhatsApp, but you easily want to make that into a video call. We're not quite there yet, but I imagine that's where we're going to see ourselves heading into peak this year.
So a couple of questions on the back of that. What channels do you find are most effective for Beauty Pie? What are the channels that people want to interact with your agents on mostly? Is it voice-based, or are we talking more digitally based mediums?
We have a real mix. So based on the type of query, if it's just chasing an order, that will be through digital. But if they really want to be consulted through a process, that would be through either WhatsApp or picking up the phone. And we also find it a lot easier on our end, whilst we have that customer, instead of going back and forth, to do it right there in that one interaction, making sure they can transact without any issues, and even maybe converting them if they're not a member.
So then that leads to my second question around what we were discussing about this concierge level of service. Based on your experience, what is the ideal profile for somebody who comes to work at Beauty Pie, and where do you find these people?
That's a great question. They would need to be passionate about what we do as a business. So cutting out that middleman, bringing high luxury products to the end consumer, and having that product knowledge. Not only are they just sat in customer service function, but they need to be able to work with the marketing team, the new product development team. We get a lot of feedback. People always consider customer service as that end function, but actually there's so many deep insights that we can push out back to the rest of the business.
Yeah, and that leads me to a point that I think is really important about customer insight and that level of ability to really mine information. So, as somebody who's worked in customer experience leadership roles pretty well all your career, what do you see as the role of analytics in a member-based organization that is providing luxury beauty products towards a set number of consumers?
It's absolutely our North Star. Member segmentation, seeing different behaviors from different age brackets, genders, frequency of purchases, right? One thing that we're really excited to launch is sending prompts once someone's had supplements for 30 days, saying, hey, are you running low? Click here and purchase your next replenishment. All of that deep data is going to be able to get us to serve customers better, predicting what they might want before they even know that they want it, and reviewing trends and how we can, bucket our customers and give them the right personalized messages through marketing.
It's fascinating because I think a lot of people more or less associate what you just described with Amazon. Whenever I log on to my Amazon account, it's always telling me what new 1980s themed vinyl album I should be buying or what spy book I should be purchasing as well. But the reality is, in more often times than I would care to admit, I actually do make these purchases.
Mhm.
So we're talking not just a case of making sure that the member of Beauty Pie feels that they're being listened to, or that they're being, how would I put this? They feel that the company's in touch with them, but it's also driving a lot of revenue on the back of that too.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. And when you talk about the flip side, there's NPS that we track. So that's a key data point for us to ensure that within our various cohorts, we understand the behavior and, we can make changes to the pricing, the modeling, whatever it may be based on the feedback of these cohorts.
So thinking a little bit about the whole concept of the buzz expression, digital transformation that we hear so much about these days,
Mhm.
and I do believe that there is legitimate reason for organizations to pursue digital transformation. How would this apply, do you feel, for a members-based organization like Beauty Pie, or any other type of an organization that's going into that luxury end of the products and service space?
Great question. Let me have a think about this one. I think it's important to kind of review the tools that we have today and make sure we're not just going to the next shiny tool that says it's going to do
Yeah.
something. How do we make our tech stack talk to each other and give us the right information? So we're starting with what is our end goal, and does our current tech stack do that? And if not, going out to market to maybe, and in my personal opinion, having one vendor cover most of them so you can get the most out of it, right? Um, and making sure that you're kind of segmenting this. Digital transformation doesn't happen in a week. It is a very long journey. It takes a lot of stakeholders from all over the business. So making sure that we're getting on the roadmaps of the dev team and all other teams are actively having a say, because then the transformation will break if not all stakeholders are involved at every stage to make sure that we're getting to the right end result for the customer.
Well, it's interesting because I remember starting my career in CX as a
Mhm.
analyst for a market research agency, and we were covering all aspects of what we called CRM back then. That's how old I am. Anyway, I remember there was a big debate that was all about deploying cool technology versus practical technology. And what you said about the shiny objects, I think rang so true, because back in the early 2000s, we saw people flocking to all sorts of different solutions that were supposed to be game changers, that were going to revolutionize the way they did business from a CX or a CRM perspective. And it's amazing how so many of these elements just were as forgotten 6 months later as they were at the top of people's lists the previous 6 months.
I agree, and there's a lot of options out there right now, and I'm sure that will continue with innovation. But I guess it's about not getting distracted by those shiny objects, and as you said, maybe stripping it back to what is essential and what's a nice to have, and finding somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, and I think that's something that organizations really need to look at. Last week we had an interview with Stuart Knight from FlowSwitch, and he was talking about doing cost optimization analyses from a CX perspective on different organizations and the amount of redundancy and the amount of waste that you can pull out. And it's almost stripping it back from a customer relationship management angle to figure out what you're doing, how best to do it, what you need for it, and figuring out how much you don't need, which might actually be complicating things.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I would be lying if I said we weren't in that phase right now. We're at the point of we were a startup, we're now in a very mature stage. So there are legacy platforms that we now maybe need to retire as we want to grow and scale. So absolutely, that's a good nugget of information for me to take away.
Well, you always learn something on the CX files, and I've certainly learned a lot today. So Chandni Bhatt from Beauty Pie, thank you so much for taking some time. It's been wonderful having you on the show, and hopefully we can have you back on soon.
Amazing. Thank you, Peter.
Thanks for listening to the CX Files podcast. We really appreciate your feedback and suggestions. You can reach myself, Mark Hillary, or Peter Ryan via LinkedIn. Please also leave a rating or review on your favourite podcast provider, as that helps more people to find us. As always, we'd like to thank Chris Haig at Traction Media for the CX Files graphics. See you next week.